Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Suzanne Ulofse. I'm the chairperson for this webinar, and I would like to say welcome to each and every one of you for taking the time to join us this afternoon for this session around the South Africa Waste Picker Registration System, the pilot project report back. We've got 3 speakers lined up for this afternoon. The first person is Prof. Linda Godfrey from the CSIR, who are engaged with the development of the registration system. Then we also have Prof. Melanie Sampson, who's currently with UJ, who's also involved with the registration and the pilot project. And then we are also going to have Ms. Eva Mukwena from ARO, who is a waste picker that's been involved in this project as well, and also having to register on the system. So I really hope that this afternoon will be worth your while and that we will all learn something from this project. So with that, I'm going to say to hand over to Prof. Linda Godfrey from the CSIR to give us some insights into the background of the project and where we currently are. Thanks, Linda, over to you.
Thanks very much, Suzanne. If you can stop sharing your screen, I'll just quickly pop up a presentation. Wonderful, thank you very much.
Is a horrific tragedy that cannot be tolerated.
There we go. Hopefully everybody should be able to see that. And I'll just quickly pop it onto full screen mode.
Before you start, Linda, may I just ask everybody to mute yourself so that we don't get interferences by background noise. There are a lot of people online. And if you have questions, you're welcome to also pop them in the chat box if you're afraid that you may forget your questions. Otherwise, after the presentations, I will give some time for questions as well. Thanks, Linda. You can continue.
Great, thanks very much, Suzanne. Yeah, I'm going to be quite quick in terms of just providing a very short introduction and then hand over to Melanie and to Eva to really take us through the content and the core of the session this afternoon. So I really just wanted to provide context and background in terms of where this national waste registration system came from and what the intent of it is. So many that are on the call on the webinar this afternoon might recall that there was a process started, I think, golly, Melanie, back in 2016, I think it was, with research that was funded by the Department of Science and Innovation to really understand waste picker integration in South Africa. And out of that process came the development of waste picker integration guidelines for South Africa. And the guidelines outlined 10 basic actions to start waste picker integration, one of them being around waste picker registration. What was really nice about the development of the guidelines was that the process itself involved multiple stakeholders from the waste sector, from business, from industry, from government, and also waste picker organizations such as SALPA and ARO. And so in the multi-stakeholder working group that was established, there was a lot of discussion around the registration and a registration system. So, for example, should we have one registration system? Should there be many? Should it be, based at a province level or at a national level? Who should host the registration system? Who should be eligible for registration within the registration system? So there was a really deep, meaningful discussion that happened around the registration. With that came the development of the extended producer responsibility regulations for South Africa, which was also quite a lengthy journey that was walked in South Africa. And the regulations themselves also spoke to issues around waste picker integration, around compensation for the role that waste pickers play, around registration on a national registration system, on a registration database. And so there was a lot of activity happening around the integration of informal waste pickers into the South African waste economy. We had this initial work at the top, as I mentioned, around the research, around the development of the guidelines. And at the same time, we had a number of different producer responsibility organizations or PROs with their own systems or in discussion with different developers around systems. And so the question is, really, how could we bring all of this together and really make sure that we had integration? And so we identified the need through discussion with colleagues, working in the ICT space around the need for what we call the master list, which was really around the person. It was around the individual. Who are they, and some details around them. And that was essentially the heart of the National Waste Picker Registration System. And so it's intended to give effect to the guidelines, but really help to integrate the various systems that might be under development or in place already within industry themselves. And so the master list, or the National Waste Picker Registration System, is not focused, for example, on collecting data around the types of waste or the tonnages of waste, or the sale or the prices. It's focused on the individual, on the waste picker. And part of that was around the production of a waste picker card, a registration card that would come with that system. And so we were very fortunate in that National Treasury and the Department of Science and Innovation, National Treasury through the City Support Program, provided funding to really initiate the implementation of the waste picker integration guidelines. And through discussion with Professor Sampson and with the working group, we decided that essentially the first thing we would give effect to would be to actually develop a national waste picker registration system. And it happened at the same time that COVID, the pandemic, hit. And so we were asking ourselves these questions in terms of how do we actually reach the informal waste sector. There were just, the discussion around compensation during that time, and it was just extremely difficult to know where waste pickers were they operating in the absence of a registration system. So it made sense to start with the development of the registration system. That started in June of 2021, and the system developed between the period June and February of this year. We then went into a period of piloting of the system between February, and that process is just wrapping up now as we speak, and Melanie's going to speak to that in more detail just now. And we essentially, phase 1 of the system should be completed by June of this year, so essentially next month. The system is in place. We're going to hear more just now in terms of the actual piloting of the system. There's a desktop-based version as well as a version that can be used on a smartphone or a tablet. And that's just a screenshot of what it looks like on a smartphone. And so as we stand right now, in terms of current activities, we really, as I mentioned, we're wrapping up the piloting stage. It was important for us to pilot the system on the ground. And so the team from the University of Johannesburg and from Sticky Situations partnered with the African Reclaimers Organization and the South African Waste Pickers Association, SAWPA, and selected municipalities. So the City of Johannesburg, City of Cape Town, Pietermaritzburg, and Buffalo City Metropolitan Municipality, to essentially pilot the functionality of the system, to understand, was it working correctly? What do we need to do on the ground when we're actually piloting, working with informal waste pickers? And I believe it's been a very, very successful process, which we're going to hear more of now. The next steps in terms of moving on from this is we're looking at now, how do we integrate with other systems? So that's possibly a phase 2. Discussions have been had with regards to system hosting and, in the long term moving forward. And then really moving to full-scale implementation and sort of national rollout of the waste picker registration system. So with that, I'm going to leave it at that point. If anyone would like to get more information in terms of the background or context, they're more than welcome to contact me. I've popped my email address up onto the slide. But I'm going to stop at that point, and I'm sure everyone would love to hear more about the actual piloting process. Thanks, Suzanne.
Thanks very much, Linda, for a very short, concise, and to-the-point presentation. Are there any specific questions for clarity before we move on? I don't see any questions in the comments or in the chat, and I don't see any hands. So it seems like everybody is happy with what we just heard. And with that, then I'm going to ask or to hand over to Prof. Melanie Sampson to talk us through the pilot. Melanie, over to you.
Thank you so much, Suzanne, and thank you so much to Linda for that really comprehensive introduction or background and overview. I'm just going to briefly provide some more information on how we actually approached the registration. Can you see my screen, Suzanne?
We can, and it's in full screen mode.
Excellent. Okay, great. Thank you so much. So here you can see, this is one of the SAUPA members and activists in Cape Town with her card. It has been a very moving occasion when cards have been distributed. Linda did provide the background to the project. I'm really sorry, but my screen is stuck. All right. So the way that we approach this project is registration really is about and for the reclaimers, the waste pickers themselves. And because this project emerged out of the waste picker integration guideline process, the first principle that was very important in designing the project was that we needed to comply with the 10 waste picker integration principles that are in the guideline. And key amongst these are that waste pickers must be centrally involved in any kind of integration activity, that they are the experts, they are the ones who have the knowledge and understanding of how to approach integration. And this couldn't be more true than with registration. And so they need to be playing a lead in determining how we should be approaching this. And also another key principle is that reclaimers need to be paid for the work that they do on integration, because every time they work on an integration initiative or attend a meeting with non-reclaimers, then they're losing their income. And so it was very important for us to comply with all of these and the other waste picker integration principles. And the reason I was highlighting that it is so very true that waste pickers are the expert is that I think we all know, and many of us have been involved in attempts to try to register reclaimers, but when they've been led by professionals like me or municipalities, very often we struggle to succeed. And that's because of a few factors. One is, we don't really know how to find and meaningfully engage reclaimers, but also reclaimers, waste pickers have often been disappointed when people have tried to register them, nothing has come of it, and they haven't necessarily had good experiences with academics who just come and extract knowledge and write about them, or with municipalities who they're having engagements with around other issues. And so it really does take the reclaimer, the waste picker activists and organizers to be able to reach out to reclaimers and encourage them that they actually should trust this process and they should participate. And I'll speak about that a little bit more. And another principle was that we shouldn't have these be standalone registration processes, that if we're going to be doing registration with a municipality, then it has to be part of a meaningful integration process. And that's why when metros were applying to be part of the pilot, it was very important that they needed to outline how this fit in with their broader integration activities. And then the fourth principle was that we did want meaningful involvement from the municipalities. So how did we structure the pilot? First of all, I think Linda did explain that we had a technical advisor. We started with a general meeting that was open to anyone in the sector who could make input into the refining of the ideas we'd had around registration during the guideline process and then during the COVID-19 process. So we started with a large meeting. I think it was almost a year ago to today. Then we established a technical advisory committee that had representatives from PROs, from reclaimer organizations, etc. So we had the key players who were in the room helping us to do the technical design. And then in those processes, we had decided that the way we would structure the pilots, we would do 4 of them, and that we would start by doing pilots with Arrow and with SAUPA, each in a municipality of their choice, so that they were trained first and became the experts and could really help us to figure out how to reach out to and involve reclaimers, waste pickers, and to get them to participate. Then we've moved on to the city of Cape Town, where we were working directly with the Metro, and Buffalo City, where in fact Andres, my colleague from Sticky Situations who works on this project with me, and the reclaimer teams are there right now. They're in the middle of the actual registration pilot. So that what's happened, and Eva will speak more about this, is that reclaimers, waste pickers who have already been trained in the Arrow and SAUPA processes are then participating in the training and rollout of the pilot in the 2 metros. And that's been a very important process. The system, I think Linda may have mentioned this, is in order to be registered, 2 people must be present to register a reclaimer or a waste picker. The registrar can be anyone in the sector who is registered to be a registrar, but they always must be accompanied by a waste picker verifier, because it's really only waste pickers, reclaimers, who can really tell if someone is a reclaimer or not. And we all know that in previous processes, unfortunately, we've had many people who weren't actually doing that work in the sector who were registered, and they use the same device so that we know that they are together when they do that registration. One thing we realized when we were doing the Johannesburg pilot, or the Aero pilot in Johannesburg, which was the first one, is that it was crucially important to do mobilization with the reclaimers who we were approaching for registration before the actual week of registration, so that there could be outreach to them, so that they could have some education, so that they could really discuss with other reclaimers, waste pickers, what is this registration thing, what is integration, and why should we trust this system, and why should we be willing to register, and also giving them information on where they could register and what they needed to bring. And in fact, in the municipalities where we haven't had much contact with reclaimers, where they aren't very organized, and that was actually in both Cape Town and in Buffalo City, we had to do more than one trip in advance to lay those foundations. Then in terms of the actual week of piloting, day 1 was training, where my colleague Andries really played the leading role in getting all of the reclaimers, and when we were piloting with the metros, the metro representatives as well, getting them registered on the system, and then teaching them how to actually register and verify. And it was always very exciting, because they started by registering the reclaimers who were participating in the project. Then they do 3 days of piloting. And so in Buffalo City right now, they've just finished day 1 of piloting. Ava is there. Maybe she'll give us a hot off the press update on how it's going. And then 1 day of evaluation. And in fact, this number of 778 is outdated. I'll give you the current number at the end of the presentation. So I think Linda's already shown you a photo. This is the card that gets issued. And here are just some photos so that you can see the really participatory way in which we're doing the training. In this photo, the woman on the far left is one of the app developers from CSIRO who came to assist with the training. Here are reclaimers queuing. You can see very orderly, nice COVID physical distancing to be registered. This is at the Marie-Louise landfill in Johannesburg. Here's a mass meeting in Cape Town that was held on the Saturday after the pilot registration was done, so that as many reclaimers could be brought together to receive their cards. And here you can see there's a system being set up, or the cards are being laid out for people to come and collect them. And everyone, when they collect their card, they have to sign so that we know the card has been received by the correct person. So to date, there are 960 reclaimers who have been registered and verified in the 4 pilot sites. And as I mentioned, we have 2 more days of piloting in Buffalo City. So hopefully these numbers will go up. They will definitely go up in the next 2 days. So just briefly, what are some of the lessons that we've learned through this piloting process? The first really is, as I've already emphasized, that it is absolutely crucial for waste pickers, reclaimers to lead in the process. They are the only ones who know how to mobilize their colleagues, their comrades, to be able to find them, to build that trust, to bring them on board, to be willing to be registered, and that the pre-mobilization is absolutely crucial. And so this is something that as we continue to roll out the system, it's really important to build that foundation. And that really just involves providing resources to reclaimer organizations, reclaimer activists to go out and do that mobilization. Without that, when we haven't done that sufficiently, then we've had a much poorer turnout. Another lesson is that it has been really important to do targeted integration training and support for the municipalities. Originally, we had thought we would do some kind of quite standard workshops that we've been developing as part of the associated project being funded by the government of Japan and UNIDO on integration training and capacity building. But, you know, each municipality is in its own process, and they're in different places in their processes. So what we really had to do was to engage in deep discussion with the metros about where they were at, what knowledge they had, what capacity they had, what were the questions that they had about integration, and to really tailor those engagements. And it was really fantastic to see that just through this process, there really has been a strengthening of relationships between the reclaimers, waste pickers, and the metro officials. And we've been very fortunate that the ideal situation has happened where we've had very senior municipal officials involved in the processes. And so this has laid a much stronger foundation for them to continue working together on the broader project of waste picker integration once the pilot is over. I've mentioned the importance of key senior officials being involved. One of the challenges that has emerged is, you know, the pilots have been 5 days long, and of course it's been very difficult for senior officials to take off 5 entire days to be involved in the actual piloting on the ground. I think in the end it has worked quite well. I think the metro officials have usually attended at least one day, or have tried to attend at least one day of the actual piloting, and I think it's been very revelatory for them. So even if municipal senior officials can't be involved on all 3 days, it is really important for them to be at the training and the evaluation, and hopefully at least one day of piloting. We have had kind of lower level municipal officials, and in some cases interns who've been participating on behalf of the municipalities. And to be honest, we were a little concerned about this at the beginning, but given that we had the much broader, higher level engagement and support, it was actually very useful to have these officials involved. It really helped to open their eyes and to understand what waste picker integration really means on the ground. And so I think that's helping to support not only further registration when the municipality continues, but also in terms of the more longer term integration processes. One of the key things that we have learned is that the system that is designed, as Linda mentioned, is an online system, but it's very difficult to get connectivity in, you know, many landfills. So we end up in a tiny corner of a landfill trying to get access to the internet, and some areas just don't have coverage at all. So there really is a need to develop an app that can be used offline, and that's something we have to explore together with colleagues in national government and industry, how we can secure the funds to ensure that this happens for a much more effective and efficient registration system. And then just finally, in terms of the way forward, so we are, as I've mentioned, finishing the last pilot project now. By the end of June, we will have completed the pilots, the evaluations, and the reports will be available on the pilot and what we've learned from it. We have developed an effective system for registration and a process around that, and we will be documenting that. We have confirmed, it said 99% now, we have actually confirmed $100,000 from the World Bank ProBlue program for funding for an extension of this pilot to try to register. We're aiming for 8,000 reclaimers, waste pickers by November, and November is an important date because that's when the EPR payments to reclaimers are meant to kick in. That project as well will be led by SELPA and Arrow. They will be determining, you know, developing their own plans for rolling out the registration. But of course, there's far more than 800,000 reclaimers in the country, and that funding isn't sufficient. And so really the conversation now needs to be, how do we secure more funding? How do we get broader buy-in? And how do we roll out registration across the country? So I'll end my presentation there, and I'm happy to answer any questions. And I'm sure, like you, I'm really looking forward to Eva's input on her experience in assisting, playing a leading role in the piloting and engaging other reclaimers and registering them. Thank you, Suzanne.
Thanks very much, Melanie. I see there's 2 hands and we have a number of questions. So I think let's start in the order that they appeared. The first question was by Sonia Diaz, who want to know how did you define who were the waste pickers allowed to register?
No, thanks, Sonia. That's a really important question. So the first thing that had to be agreed is that we need to include all reclaimers who are working in the country. So we are including South Africans and non-South Africans on the system. Currently, everyone needs to provide some form of official identification, but it can be any form of official identification. We do not capture their nationality. So there's no way for someone to just search the system and look for people from particular countries to try to target them for other purposes. And, you know, it has been really exciting that non-South Africans who have been engaged, who are the actual majority, I think, of reclaimers in a place like Johannesburg, have been very keen to register and that they are trusting that process. In terms of the other criteria, what we do is we have 3 questions at the very beginning, before the actual registration begins, that can help to confirm that the person is actually a working reclaimer. And because the context for reclaiming differs so greatly between each part of the country, each municipality, those questions are developed by local reclaimers before the piloting starts. So we're trying very hard to be able to determine that. And yeah, I think I can say more about that if you would like me to go into more detail.
Thanks, Melanie. I think due to the number of hands, let's keep it at that. I see the next hand in line is from Musa Chamani. You can unmute yourself and speak, Musa. Can anybody hear Musa? Because I can't.
Musa, could you raise your hand again? Because I need to unmute. Yeah, thank you. Here you go.
Hi, everyone. Thanks. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Sure. No, for me, it was just a comment to say thanks to everybody who's been involved in the registration of waste pickers. I think so far we're doing very good, getting reports from different coordinators who are busy with the pilots in different places. So I would say big ups to you and well done to everyone who's been involved in this process. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Musa. The next question is from Anne-Marie Du Plessis. The question is, what is the benefit of being registered as a reclaimer, particularly for those who work on registered landfills and not in the street?
So I think, Suzanne, it's best to leave that for Eva to answer, given that she is a reclaimer herself. So the next speaker will address that, I'm sure.
Okay, thank you. And then the next question is from Yamkela Zetwana. Great work. How soon can the registration be available for non-pilot municipalities? She wants to register 880 waste pickers in ORT district municipality.
So a part of the pilot, of course, was, oh, can you hear me? Yeah.
Yes, we can.
Part of the pilot, of course, was piloting the actual registration system that we use. And so CSIR is busy doing the final revisions to the system to take into account the lessons that we learned about the actual registration system. That will be, the revisions will be completed quite soon. I think we need to have a general discussion about how we can expand the rollout. Linda, I'm not sure if you want to respond to this. My sense is perhaps we need to have a broader meeting focusing specifically on this. But Linda, do you have any thoughts on this issue?
Oh, sorry, Melanie, I was busy typing responses to some of the questions, so I'm perhaps not paying attention. What was the question?
No, that's fine. Someone has asked, how soon would it be possible to do registration in other places that are not that have not been involved yet?
So I think from our side, we would like to just obviously wrap up the commitment to National Treasury with the system development and piloting, which, as I said, is expected now in June. So I would ask perhaps just for a few weeks to make sure that we have a complete and final system before we start engaging on sort of national rollout. Thanks, Melanie.
Thanks, Linda. The next person with a hand up is Hope Muremo.
Good day, everyone. This is Hope Murema from Kruger to Kenyans Biosphere. I'm sorry I missed a couple of information in the beginning. My question is, where are you currently piloting this project, and from the current locations that you are operating, are you willing to expand to other areas, and like what are the requirements for one to become registered or a reclaimer?
So Hope, we've piloted in 4 places. SAUPA selected Pietermaritzburg, Arrow selected Joburg, and then the city of Cape Town and Buffalo City Metropolitan Municipality. We have discussed a bit in terms of how we will be rolling it out. There's some funding to deepen the piloting in these areas, and we will possibly be able to extend to other areas. So it is important to know who is interested. But as I think I was just saying, I think we need to have a meeting really to explore how we can be doing rollout to other locations, particularly considering the issues around funding.
Thanks, Melanie. The next question is from Anele Sololo. Well done to everyone involved. What about the ones that work in the streets and members of any reclaimer waste picker organizations such as ARO and SAPU? Who will verify those?
So if I can just answer that briefly, we're registering reclaimers both on landfills and in streets. And again, I think Eva McQuena is best placed to answer that question because she has been leading those processes in several of the municipalities.
Okay, thank you. Then the next question is, we would appreciate the portal link can be available so as to register them as soon as possible, as a municipality already working with them on a daily basis. So I think that's just a request. If all the issues are sorted, that we make the link available. Then there's another question from Wendy van Rensburg. I recall from previous webinar that we were still looking for payment. Have this been resolved?
Linda, would you like to answer that question?
So the sorry, again, I was multitasking around questions. The issue of payment is not part of the national registration system. So as I indicated earlier on, but perhaps for anyone who might have joined after my presentation, the national waste picker registration system focuses on the individual. It's about the person, who they are, their details, etc. The national system does not capture information on the tonnages of waste, the types of waste, nor does it act as a payment system. It is essentially the common master list of waste pickers that any system implemented by a producer responsibility organization or another entity would essentially draw on for the unique identifier. Payment systems and things like that would have to run through the producer responsibility organization and their respective, and so we've left the details around that out of the national registration system. It's a separate discussion that's currently happening in South Africa around payment, means of payment, what the payment should be, but I don't think that's part of what we're discussing this afternoon. Thanks, Melanie.
Thanks, Linda. Then I see there's a hand from Lefa Munonga. Lefa, you're still on mute. Naomi, can you perhaps help unmute there?
He can mute himself.
It's covered.
Suzanne, he's just sent a note saying he's covered.
Okay, thank you. Then the next hand that's up is, oh, now they jump around. Makgoba van die Kerk.
Thank you, Doc. So my question is, do we have coordinators in Ekurhuleni and Tshwane who would be willing to share their details? I work for a waste management company and we have a number of reclaimers at our sites, and they obviously have heard of this from me, but they don't quite have the details. And I would love to share details with people, you know, with some of the committees at our sites, just so that they know who to reach out to.
So we've not yet worked in either of those metros. So that is something we'll have to be looking at as we move forward. And what I wanted to mention earlier is that it's not as simple as just making the website available, because what needs to happen is that there needs to be training. So if a municipality wants to be implementing this, in a particular area, or industry or waste picker organizations want to be spreading to new areas, then there needs to be this process of training in terms of why we're doing registration, but also how to do it. And then people need to be nominated by the respective organizations so that they can be registered on the system, either as a registrar, or if they're a waste picker, then they can be a registrar and a verifier. And then there needs to be a rollout. So I think, you know, what I'm really getting from this session is that we need to have some more internal discussion in terms of how the rollout can be planned, and how we can make those opportunities available, particularly where there is already funding. And then this question I raised at the end, where do we get additional funding for this?
Thanks, Melanie. I just want to check, Musa, is that in your hand?
So there's an old hand, sorry.
Okay, then all the hands are gone. Lefa, do you have a new hand, or is that also an old one? Seems like that was also an old one. Okay. Then now I'm confused. I see here under Anele, there was Melanie Sampson would like to answer the question live around not members from the organizations.
Sorry, I don't know how to use the system. I was trying to type a response, but basically we're not only registering members of the organizations. It's just that the organized reclaimers, waste pickers, are leading the process, but we've already registered hundreds of reclaimers who are not members of either of the organizations.
Thank you, Melanie. Then the next question is from Louis Mashlangu. Municipalities like City of Joburg want to start the registration process. How could this process run effectively without confusing the reclaimers?
No, thanks, Louis. So this is a really important question, and something I really want to emphasize again is that registration cannot be done without the active involvement of reclaimers. And so, you know, in a city like Johannesburg, there obviously are strongly organized reclaimers. And so there would have to be a partnership with Arrow, if there's any other organizations, so that reclaimers, remember, play a leading role in this process. So there would have to, in Johannesburg, there would have to be discussions between the city and Arrow to be looking at how are we going to do this together, because municipalities, no one can do registration on the system without active involvement of reclaimers. And where we don't have organized reclaimers, then it's a combination both of I think ideally bringing in SAUPA or Arrow to assist with the mobilization, but then electing local reclaimers to be part of it. And we have done that already in Cape Town and in Buffalo City, where you know, reclaimers who have been activists in their own ways, but not necessarily in one of the organizations, have been brought in and trained, and they are now contact people with the municipalities.
Thank you, Melanie. I think a lot of the other questions that are still popping up and around is people wanting to start. That's not necessarily part of the pilots. And I'm glad to see people are so eager to have waste pickers registered. Linda, I'm going to allow you to quickly comment or raise your hand is raised. And then I'm going to pass over to Eva to start her presentation.
Yeah, thanks very
Linda?
much, Suzanne. I just wanted to be very, very quick in actually responding to what you've raised as well, yeah, is that I understand there's an excitement now about getting people registered, but as Melanie has stressed, there's a process around this. It's not just about getting numbers on the system, getting people on the system. This is really about integration. And Melanie highlighted the fact that there will be documents that will be produced out of the piloting process that will capture, for example, how one goes about the registration. And so I can understand and appreciate the passion and the willingness to get as many people registered as quickly as possible. But we also have to be very sensitive around the fact that we're not capturing non-waste pickers, non-reclaimers, that we're not capturing the wrong data or rubbish data. This really is a critical process, this, and so we need to make sure that we do follow it in the best way possible to make sure that we have an active and a reliable working national registration system. I don't think I said that very well, sorry, but but we need to go slow to go fast. Maybe that's the short way of saying it. Thank you.
Thank you, Linda. Yes, I think your point is if we don't get it right the first time, then we sit with a lot of nonsense on the system, and that's what we want to avoid. So rather take it a bit slower and make sure that we capture the correct and accurate information on the database. Well, with that, I'm going to leave the discussion for now and give opportunity to Eva to share her experience with us. And then as time allows afterwards, we can have more discussion. It's not that I want to stop the discussion. I just want to ensure that we allow Eva enough opportunity to speak. And I'm afraid that we may answer a lot of the questions that she already has answers for in her presentation if we don't give her the opportunity. So Eva, over to you, please.
Okay, hi everyone. I'm Eva Mokoena, chairperson of ARO. Firstly, I would like to talk about the experience that I had while busy registering reclaimers. It's quite an experience that helped me to realize how trustworthy the people are, and again, to read the minds of other people, because as organizations, sometimes we don't understand the way people are thinking and why they don't join organizations. They prefer to be alone. The second one is the challenges that we're facing. People, they've lost trust on us people that are saying we represent them because of our municipalities. They came, then they bring empty promises, then they don't fulfill them. Then it's becoming a challenge, even if there is an opportunity that comes like this one. People still don't believe that it's gonna happen because of the promises that they get at first, then they never fulfilled. Then the thing about this registration, it was really a hard one because you have to prepare people, make sure that they understand what the registration is about. Some, they'll only ask you, how much are you going to get after registering? Then you'll say, how much are you going to get? I don't even know how much am I going to get, but I'm registered. I'm a reclaimer. Then, and again, the process is a good one. And what I like about it is that no one can enter on the system without CSIR knowing that someone has entered because it's using your email. And again, the importance of this registration is normally it's called, we're starting with the word recognition first. It shows that reclaimers are being recognized, or waste pickers are being recognized by the national. And again, we will like the municipalities to play part, like the municipality in Cape Town and here at Buffalo City. We are working hand in hand with the municipalities. And it's really show interest to know that there are municipalities that wants to learn more about their reclaimers. Like in Cape Town, they didn't know about reclaimers. They did knew, but they didn't know how to confront them, how to talk to them. So it was really helpful for us to be there and organize the people that are doing recycling. We didn't organize the people to join ARO, but we're organizing everybody. Whether we're a member of SAUPA or we're a member of any organization that says it represents you as an informal worker, especially a reclaimer or a waste speaker, then you were more than welcome to come. And we exposed many NGOs who were using reclaimers' names to fulfill their own benefits while taking the ID numbers from reclaimers. There were workshops that they don't understand. That helped them to speak up because we were engaging with them, organizing them, explaining to them the system and what does it mean. So that's what we were doing. And again, the challenges that we faced is the meaning of the calling of things. In Joburg, we've got this meaning in other areas, but the thing in Cape Town and even here in East London, the way they calling the material, the names, it's really hard to understand if we haven't stayed with them because most of them they're talking Xhosa. So they don't call these things PET, but you see them, they are working. They are picking them up. They do. Because even the names that we called non-ferrous and ferrous, they call them chicks. So first time we hear that name, what is chicks? We didn't know what this chicks is. Then someone said, no, those are steel people who are working with steel and tins. We call them that, they are doing chicks. So those things helped us to learn more languages and to learn, to have the experience of how do we work. And we found that mostly in Cape Town are elderly people that are doing recycling, and they are mostly working with bottles. They are mostly working with broken bottles. And they are having a huge challenge when it's coming for them to get money from those companies that are taking their material. So the pilot really helped us to learn more about other reclaimers in other areas and really helped us to help the reclaimers to speak out and say, no, this one is not a reclaimer. Because working with people who are from the place, it's really helping. Unlike you'll come as Eva Mokoena, then you'll go to a place, obviously you don't know the people that are working there. So it's really helpful to work with the reclaimers that are on that place so that you can achieve whatever you want to achieve. And organizing is the most key in every area that we go. We organize the first week, then the second week it's registration. People are ready. They know what are they coming to do. Instead of just saying, no, we are doing a pilot, then you don't go and organize. Then the other thing is that on the registration, we talking about people who are doing the actual job, people who are making a living out of recyclables. We don't register people who are working in buyback centers. We want actual people, it's whether it's a cooperative or not. As long as you are doing this work and depend on it. In a buyback center, we ask, are you hired? Yes, I'm hired, I'm getting paid here. I don't go out and do recycling. Then those kind of people we don't register because they are not reclaimers. They are workers who are working in buyback centers to buy material from other workers. Thank you. And again, just to add, I would like to emphasize the municipalities to play more part because we've noticed that in most areas, like here where we are now in East London, most of the recyclables, they don't know about them. They are only collecting cans, steel, aluminum, brass, and 2-liter Cokes and 5 liters. They don't collect most of the material, even HD and PP. No, you don't collect. They think it's a waste. So it's really important to make like workshops and teach people about this recycling thing, especially those whom we are whom we dealing with. And again, just to emphasize, we are having a problem as the people who are trying to make people aware about the issues of recycling, that they must help. The councillors, we find a challenge mostly in most of the councillors, they don't want to be part. They'll stop, they'll do anything just to stop, or they want to make this thing a political thing, of which it doesn't work for us, because we are not here to promote even our own organizations, but we are here to make sure that people are getting recognition. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Eva. I think there's a lot of compliments for you in the chat box. So thank you for everybody for sharing the compliments to Eva and her team, working hard and effortlessly to try and assist other pickers to register. It is really applauded from many sides. I don't see any other real questions at the moment. Are there any other burning questions that anybody has? You're welcome to raise your hand so that we can hear you and you can share your question. Melanie, I see your hand is up.
Thank you, Eva. Thanks so much for a really fantastic and very insightful presentation. I think you've given all of us a real understanding of what is happening on the ground. I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit more about what it meant for you to be registered, because you were also registered when we started the project in Johannesburg, and what it's meant for other reclaimers, the kinds of responses you've been receiving. Yeah, if you could just share a little bit more about that. What does it mean to yourselves to be registered on this system?
To tell the truth, I'll talk about the elderly people that I represent mostly. Because as for me, I told myself that I'm going to fight until I get recognized. So as for the elderly people, some were crying, some were happy, because finally they've seen a light. They've been collecting the material without being told, without being recognized, without being, no one was taking care of them, and no one was helping them in doing anything. Like after seeing that, no, after giving them their cards showing that, no, this is a pilot, but you see, you've been registered as a reclaimer now or as a waste picker now. Even the government knows that you exist. No one will ever come in your yard and say you are stealing something, especially the recyclables and all the things that they were having, because some, they were collecting things. Some people, they will give them old stoves, and especially, I'll talk about those colored areas. The excitement, because they were not even allowed to go inside the places where there are people who are getting high paid, because they will say, no, you are here to steal. You act as if you're doing recycling, you dirty things and everything. So some, they did have trust on us that, no, these people are telling the truth. Some, they didn't even want to budge. But after seeing other people getting their cards, they wanted to register. As I'm speaking, Cape Town is waiting for us. Like, I get calls, Eva, when are you coming back? Eva, when are you coming back? So it's really helping to see other people acknowledging the thing that is happening and wants to be part. You know, as for me, as Eva Mokoena, I'm thrilled, I don't want to lie, because it shows that as a leader, there is something that I've done that changed other people's life and also mine, because by having that card, I can show it to anybody. Hey, when I say I'm a reclaim, I don't think I'm playing. This is my card. So it shows that I'm proud of who I am. And the stigma that we're getting, especially to those areas where they don't allow reclaimers, those cards are going to really help because they will know who you are. And they'll know where to go in order for them to find out that, no, this is legit. This is not something that I can just produce on my own and say, no, this is mine. No, this is legit. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Eva, for that. Melanie, I see there's a request from Anele for you just to share the screen again, the slide with the card of the registered people, which is needed for a report back to a boss. I hope that's the one that you were asking for, Anele. Thank you, Melanie, for that. I'm looking to
And
see
sorry, Suzanne, can I just note this is not an actual reclaimer because we obviously wouldn't want to share someone's personal details. This is a photo of one of the developers from CSIR when we were just developing the system. But this is what the cards look like.
Which is also why there's a mask on. The actual waste reclaimers do not have masks on.
I was wondering about the mask, but I assumed that it was for the presentation's purposes. So thank you, ladies, for clarifying that as well. Okay, I'm going to ignore the hand by Lefa. He said I must please ignore that one. Are there any other questions from anybody? Or can we call it a day? I see we have lost a few people already. And there are some comments in the comments registers or in the chat as well that we can take note of. Contact details for that Musa shared just around the waste picker organizations. And there's a request, Eva, by Yamkela, that she would like to invite you to the SOPA, you and SOPA for the planned our Tambo District Waste Pickers in Daba. So just to take note of that as well, you are now in demand, it seems. So great stuff. Thank you for your presentation. If there is no other questions or comments from anybody, Melanie, your hand is still up. Is that a new hand?
Yes, I just wanted to say before we close that I think we've really heard all of the requests and the enthusiasm of different municipalities and organizations to participate in this process and really roll out registration of reclaimers, waste pickers in the country. And it's really exciting to see that kind of enthusiasm. And it's certainly something that we will discuss internally and then also with the other partners such as DFFE, SALGA, obviously SAUPA and Arrow and the industry associations to see what we can propose in terms of a way forward. And we will definitely communicate with people who've participated in this event and on the distribution lists that we have in the future to provide some kind of updates around that. Thank you.
Thanks, Melanie. Linda, are there any last words from your side?
Thanks, Suzanne. No, just from my side as well, I think as kind of co-funder of this initiative, it's been incredibly exciting. And, it's great to see how the research led to the guidelines, which has now led to a national registration system. And to hear back from Eva, and also I know Ellie popped a comment in the chat box as well in terms of just how an emotional response it's been from informal waste pickers. And I think sometimes we just underestimate how valuable something, what seems to us just as simple as a card can be for people who are, have been working in this space for so long. So it's wonderful to see the progress that's been made. And from my side, just a huge thank you to Melanie, to Andres, the team that's been involved in this, to all of the colleagues from Arrow and SAPO who have led, actively on the ground to facilitate the registration and integration process. Thank you to them as well. So I'm really excited in terms of now how we ramp this up and scale it out at a national level. Thank you very much.
Wonderful. And with that, I just want to say thank you very much to everybody who attended this afternoon session. We had 103 people online at one stage, which to me is also a good indication that we are on the right track with the work that we are doing. And a big thanks also to Melanie and Linda for their hard work in making these things happen and for looking after the waste pickers. And a special thank you also to Eva, who obviously took time off her day working in the field to present to us. You are a true inspiration to everybody that was part of this webinar. And I hope that in the future we will hear from this initiative again. And hopefully by then we will have a lot more pickers registered and formally recognized in South Africa. So with that then, thank you very much for everybody involved. Thank you for your presence and have a wonderful evening. Thank you. Bye.